Okay. Well, it is 5:36, so let's get this show started. Thank you all for joining this evening for the Nez Perce Corridor Study Public Information Meeting. This evening, we're going to walk you through the project and describe what is being recommended, and we'll take all your questions as we go. With that, I would like to advance to the next slide. There we go. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Edinson Batista, who's the ACHD project manager, and he's going to do a welcome and some introductions of our team. Take it away, Edinson.
Yes, thank you, Darren. Welcome, everyone. This is the to the Nez Perce Street Corridor Study virtual public meeting. Just as an introduction to the project, certainly this is a project that we have been working on since the start of this year in January, and we have conducted an assessment of the overall corridor as well as several public involvement meetings throughout the entirety of the year. And now we're entering into the third public outreach where we're back again to engage with the community, to show, to present the proposed improvements that we heard from the community from the previous two public outreach, and this is the result of that, of the overall engagement that we have done with the public. So welcome everyone, and I will start with some introductions. My name is Edinson Bautista, ACHD Senior Transportation Planner and Project Manager for the Nez Perce. And going through the project team, I will continue with the technical experts, in this case, Josh Sack from ACHD. He's the traffic representative. Then Betsy Roberts from Jacobs, Margaret Sills from ACHD. From the public engagement side, we have Christy Folks from ACHD, Avery Forster from ACHD, and Leanne Rudland from Jacobs. And and Darren, I will give you time to introduce yourself, and we can get the meeting started.
All right, thanks, Edinson. My name is Darren Fluke, and I'm the project manager on the consultant side of the house, and I'll be your host for this evening and run you through the project as designed. First, though, let's do a quick orientation on the use of Teams. This evening, we won't be doing any live Q&A, at least verbally. We'd ask that you type your questions into the chat box, which you can find at the top right-hand portion of the Teams window. You can see it there circled. And type your questions in or comments, and we'll be happy to respond to those in real time when we get to the Q&A portion of the presentation. You're welcome to type in questions or comments at any time, however, as we go through. Also, if you would like to avail yourself of the closed captioning option, you can do that by clicking on the three dots, and that'll give you a drop-down menu that allows you to use the closed captioning. If there's other questions as we go through this, please go ahead and just type those in the chat box. We'd also like to point out that we have a virtual open house up and online. This is the link. If you'd like to go and take a look at that after this presentation, please take a little screenshot of the link there, and you can visit it afterwards, or you can just find it by Googling the Nez Perce project corridor study, that is, and it'll get you there. That has all our detailed project information on there, along with recommendations, and you can also take the survey that we'll be taking this evening as we go through this public information meeting. So with that, I think we ought to go ahead and walk through the corridor proposed design, and yeah, so let's do that. So the project begins here at Malad and Orchard Street, and I'm going to progress through the project from the west to the east. And so we'll go east on Malad Street, where we turn north on Pond, and that takes us all the way up to Hillcrest Drive. We'll then go down the bench on Country Club, where we intersect with Roosevelt, and a brief segment goes north, and then we will turn again to the east and run down Nez Perce all the way to Columbus. This project is a little over 2 miles long, and given the length and difficulty of showing and just the diversity in the segments, we decided to break the project into 5 segments. So you see those here, again, starting at Mladen Orchard, and then we'll be progressing to the east as we go. So the segment number 1 is from Orchard Street all the way to Hillcrest Drive. And we'll walk through in detail what the proposed changes are on this. On Mladen Street, we did hear from several participants as we've been through this project that an enhanced pedestrian and bicycle crossing here at Orchard and Mladen would be beneficial. We didn't propose a design on that yet, but when we get into detailed design in the next fiscal year, that'll be something that is decided on. It's likely that it will look like the enhanced pedestrian hybrid beacon that's on Vista Avenue now, that was just installed within the last year or so. In general, one of the themes of this project is that we want to fill gaps in the sidewalk network wherever possible. And so that's what you're seeing here on Mladen on the south side. We'll be filling in this gap as you come up to Pond Street. We'll also add sharrows on Mladen, which gives bicyclists an indication of where they ought to be positioned within the road. And it also signals drivers that bikes will be present within the travel lanes. The next segment is here from going north, and so I've changed orientation on you on this drawing on the bottom. Going from left, this would be south, going north, and you can see again that we are adding segment, filling in gaps in the sidewalk as we go to the north. I'm sorry I stumbled and paused there just because I realized I forgot to do the survey at the first, after the first segment there. Ensign, do we want to go back and pick up that survey?
So currently this yeah, Darren, what are the questions that we have for the segment 1? Segment 1 for the from Orchard Street to that section of Spalding Street Country Club.
Sorry, Ensign. We have a general question here at the end of the study area segments, and so I think Leanne can pull those up, and we can do that real quick. And there we are. And so if you're online, please feel free to take the survey. And I'm going to go ahead and move us over to the next segments to get us back where we were. Apologies, everybody. And segment 1, talked about that. Here we are again going from Mladen north on Pond Street. And what we've proposed here is to fill in gaps on the east side of Pond Street in the sidewalk network. This will give us a continuous pedestrian connection from Mladen all the way up to Hillcrest Drive. And what you'll note here is this will preclude on-street vehicle parking on the east side of Pond, but on the west side, residents will still be able to park on the street or just off the street as they do now. Again, continuing to the north, this gets us further north on Pond, up here at Hillcrest Elementary. And you can see we're not proposing any changes to this segment. We've got a complete sidewalk network, and we'll be adding the sharrows to the roadway to, again, indicate the positioning for cyclists. And then going a little bit north of the of Hillcrest Elementary, you'll see we do have one small missing segment of sidewalk there on the west side of Pond. And we will go ahead and propose to fill that in. Which gets us to our polling question number 2 and 3. Leanne, do you want to go ahead and pull those up for us?
So the question says, do you agree with the proposed improvements to segment 1, Orchard Street to Hillcrest Drive? And And these questions are pulled directly from the survey. So so as you see it here, you will be able to provide your comments or select your preference on whether you strongly agree, you're neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree with the proposed improvement. So if you're not able to provide your inputs through this survey, certainly provide it online, and we will be able to capture that information as well.
Okay, Edinson, thank you. And I see we're going to just direct folks to fill out the survey online after our presentation. So we won't bring up any more of the pop-ups as we go through the next segments. All right, let's move on. Now we're on segment number 2. This is Country Club Drive, going down the bench. This would be Hillcrest Country Club at the upper left, and then of course to the north of the road. And on this segment, we had originally proposed to add a bike lane in both directions, that is in the uphill direction and the downhill direction. And based on the public feedback that we heard, a lot of pedestrian activity happens on this road, and the public was very interested in seeing better pedestrian facilities. For that reason, we made a change in the proposed road section, and that would be to add sidewalk on the north side of Country Club abutting the golf course, along with a dedicated bike lane adjoining that sidewalk. And then in the downhill direction, we would add a sharrow rather than a bike lane. That takes up less space, and also cyclists are more likely to keep up with traffic in the downhill direction. And so this was felt to be a good compromise in response to what the public was asking for. It will also that sidewalk that we'll be adding here on the roadway will better define the interface with Hillcrest Country Club and their delivery area here, and we'll provide driveways to accommodate that use at these 2 locations. Which brings us to the bottom of the hill and where Roosevelt and Country Club Drive come together. And this has a fairly significant amount of changes here, so I'm going to walk through these slowly. And if there's Edinson, if you want to hop in on this, please feel free to do that. First, I will note that you can see existing sidewalk here on the north side of Country Club Drive. Residents will recognize that sidewalk currently ends right here, and this is where we will pick up that sidewalk and match this alignment and then extend it all the way around up to Hillcrest Drive. And you can also see the bike lane being added there, and then the downhill sharrow. A significant change that we've proposed is a realignment of the intersection, and that is to tighten up the turning radius in this southbound direction as cars come from north on Roosevelt Street and want to make a right-hand turn onto Country Club. And so we've proposed some islands to better channelize the traffic and to provide safer pedestrian crossings. A companion effort with that is to add a bulb out here on the east side of Roosevelt Street, and then an enhanced pedestrian crossing with rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And those are pedestrian activated signals that indicate to vehicle drivers that pedestrians will be crossing the road. Another significant change on Roosevelt Street is that we will add buffered bike lanes in both directions, north and south, which is what you're seeing here. We do have enough right-of-way that we can maintain the existing on-street parking that is on the east side of Roosevelt. However, the addition of the buffered bike lane, and what you'll see in the next drawing is a gap in the sidewalk being filled, would mean that we would have to eliminate parking on the west side of Roosevelt Street, on-street parking. And then finally, you see we're picking up a small gap in the sidewalk network here. This will get us a complete connection all the way up to Roosevelt Street, which is our next drawing. I've changed direction on you here again, and so south is on your left, where my cursor is. You can see the extent of the sidewalk that will be added, and then adding curb gutter and sidewalk here on the west side of Roosevelt, next to the buffered bike lane. And then here on the east side, you see the buffered bike lane along with the existing on-street parking. And then another rectangular rapid flashing beacon up here at the intersection of Nez Perce and Roosevelt. Edinson, is there anything you'd like to add before I move on to segment 4?
Thank you, Darren. This is great. Thank you for providing all the details on the segment, on the proposed improvements we're given. I'm taking notes right now, so certainly we'll have questions at the end to the sort of kind of a Q&A where we'll go over some of the public's questions regarding the proposed improvements. So yeah, so certainly let's continue, and we'll go over that Q&A session here soon.
All right, excellent. So our next segment is segment 4, and this is the Nez Perce corridor going from Roosevelt all the way over to Vista, and then the 5th segment will be on to Columbus. So we looked at 3 separate alternatives and evaluated those on the Nez Perce corridor. Sorry. The first alternative, alternative A, would have maintained on-street parking on both sides of Nez Perce while adding sharrows for bicyclists and then adding bulb outs and raised intersections as traffic calming treatments at various intersections. This one was not selected for various reasons, but primarily because it didn't create enough of a safe bicycle facility for cyclists, and it was thought that the traffic calming effects would be minimal. Alternative C eliminated parking in both directions in favor of buffered bike lanes in both directions. And similarly, as well as the intersection treatments that were mentioned before. This one was also discounted because it was felt that alternative B was the better compromise, which maintains on-street parking on the north side of the street and adds bike lanes in both directions and then enhanced intersection treatments. The advantage here is that we're able to maintain essentially half of the on-street parking that exists today, and we don't create any new conflicts up at the school at the elementary school, where we currently have a bus loading zone and no parking zone and for drop-offs and pickups. And so this was the selection of the team and the public. This was the most popular alternative with the public. And in this rendering here, we're looking at Latah Street, looking to the east, of course. And so you can see the addition of bike lanes, as well as maintaining parking on this north side. And then here you can see a bulb out on the north side adjoining the existing bus stop. And so that will create a bit of a nicer zone for people using the buses. With regard to the intersection treatments, what you can see here are the intersections that are proposed for improvements. The green dots indicate where we would add bulb outs on the north side of the street. And there are 3 of those. You'll see those in the plan view as we go further into the slides. The yellow dots indicate where we're proposing raised intersections. There are 4 of those. And what you can see on the map is that basically these dots are all about 650 feet apart, so a little more than 1/10 of a mile, which will give us the desired traffic calming effect and address some of the comments that we heard from the public about speeding on the corridor. And then finally, there's 2 existing 4-way stops that will be maintained at Latah and Owyhee there at the school. Edinson, did you want to hop in?
Yeah, thank you, Darren. And certainly, thank you for this information. A lot of the proposed improvements are intended to provide that traffic calming element along the Nez Perce Street project, along the Nez Perce Street corridor. And especially with the presence of the Whitney Community Center and elementary school. Certainly that's a key connection for students to travel that walk bike to school, and also the parents who drop off their kids, as well as this is part of the bus route that connects that section. So certainly this will be calming elements that will encourage that.
Excellent. All right, let's go through the plan views then. So first segment, of course, going again from west to east, starts at Roosevelt Street and extends roughly over to Latah, or just before Latah. What you can see here is that bulb out I referenced being added at the corner. There's an existing bus stop here that will be accommodated by that bulb out. And then we have our first raised intersection here at Cleveland Street. Moving to the next segment, which roughly goes from Latah over to Atlantic. And here is the Latah bulb out that I referenced with the existing bus stop there. And then just another raised intersection at Atlantic Street here, again, about 650 feet to the east. Here we are in front of Whitney Elementary School, and you can see the existing drop-off and loading zone here in front of the school, which won't change. There's an existing four-way stop now at Owyhee, and that will not change. We are going to add some additional ADA accessible pedestrian ramps here at Gorley, and then another raised intersection for traffic calming here at Hervey Street. And then finally, Kerr Street to Taggart is what you're seeing here. Here in the middle of the drawing is Shoshone, where we have an offset intersection, an existing pedestrian crossing that will be accommodated with an additional bulb out there. And then this gets us over to Vista Street, and we are showing a raised intersection here at Abbs, and then another 650 feet or so would get us to Vista, where we have a new pedestrian hybrid beacon shown. Actually not shown here. Why? Which gets us to segment number 5, which starts here at Vista and Nez Perce and goes east to Columbus. And this is the overall view of that stretch of segment 5. And you already saw that. And so then for Columbus, similar to Pond, we have a number of gaps in the sidewalk system. We're proposing to fill those on both sides of the street. This street section would allow for on-street parking and sharrows for bicycles in both directions. And that would get us to Columbus Street and the terminus of the project, which gets us to the Q&A section. So again, go ahead,
Darren. Yeah, thank you, Darren. Thank you for all that great information and walking through the proposed improvements for the Nez Perce Street Corridor Study. Certainly, we have several questions, and we can go back and forth in between some of the slides, right, Darren?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so let's start with Pond Street, Darren. So the first question that we heard is regarding the east. Why did we choose to propose sidewalk only on the east side? Can you provide some additional input on why did we choose one side compared to the other?
Sure thing. Let me get back there real quick here. So Pond Street is challenged because it has only 40 feet of right-of-way, which is not enough right-of-way to accommodate the standard street section of curb, gutter, and sidewalk on both sides, on-street parking on both sides, and then the sharrows as well. And so specifically on this stretch of pond here that goes from Malad to the north, it was felt that a compromise, filling in the sidewalk gap on the east side gets us a continuous connection all the way to Hillcrest, and still does allow for some on-street parking on the west side. And so without having to take any additional right-of-way from from landowners and such.
Yeah, that's great. And correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, but that's exactly what we heard from the community, right? We heard the interest of some members of sidewalk on both sides, but with the present with that current property limits and the desire, the also desire of the public of having on-street parking, this is the best alternative that we came with, right?
We felt it was a good compromise and it addressed most of the public comments that we heard.
And and with the east side, we continue to show that crossing on the near the Hillcrest Elementary, right, where kids would be able to cross that street to their school.
That's correct. Nothing will change about that existing crossing, and there is a sidewalk on both sides of that street.
Perfect. The second question I have here, Darren, is regarding Country Club Drive. With the current space that we have, well, the question is, will we have enough space for sidewalk and bike lanes at this location? And what are the limits behind why didn't we choose to go with 2 bike lanes?
Yeah, so good question. So we do have more right of way on Country Club Drive. As you can see here, the back of sidewalk is still several feet off of the right of way line. However, anybody who's familiar with this roadway knows that the land falls off fairly quickly to the north, tilting toward the country club. And it becomes awfully expensive to build retaining walls large enough to accommodate a sidewalk as well as 2 bike lanes. And so the short answer is that we were limited in the space that we had. We don't have a lot of room on the other side either because we're at the toe of slope for the back of these properties here. And so again, this was felt to be the best compromise to add sidewalk on one side of the street and a bike lane on the climbing side, the uphill side, while allowing for a sharrow on the downhill side. So again, we were trying to serve the most users with the best facilities while keeping it as cost efficient as possible.
Perfect. Thank you for that explanation, Darren. So my next question is regarding Roosevelt. And that portion of Roosevelt, one of the questions that we have received what type of impacts do we present with the installation of sidewalk on the east side of Roosevelt?
I'm sorry, Ensign, can you rephrase that for me or say it again?
Yeah, so what type of impacts are we looking at with installation of sidewalk on the east side?
Oh,
on
gotcha.
the west side, sorry.
Yeah. What you can see here is the sidewalk ends where these existing townhomes start on Roosevelt. And so what we have are a lot of driveways and no curb gutter and sidewalk on this side whatsoever. And so it was felt that a good compromise was to be able to maintain the existing on-street parking on the east side of the road, which is at the bottom of the drawing that you're looking at, and then fill in the gap on the west side, which is at the top of the drawing. What that did, however, require, because we have more right-of-way to the east than to the west, was that we eliminate the on-street parking here on the west side of the road. So again, that we didn't have to request additional right-of-way from the property owners here on the west side. So this allowed us to fill the gap in without taking any additional right-of-way and serve pedestrians in this neighborhood while still maintaining more than half of the on-street parking.
Perfect, thank you, Darren. So my next question goes into Nez Perce Street between Roosevelt and Vista. And one of the question is, and maybe we can also have Josh jump in a little bit. So talking about race intersection, what type of traffic calming elements does the race intersection gives to the people driving and people walking and biking throughout the area?
Josh, do you want to take that, or do you want me to start?
Sure, I can go ahead. So if you're talking about a raised intersection is going to be very similar to what you see in design for kind of our typical speed tables or speed humps. It has the same profile, and it provides kind of very similar benefits to that. The only difference is that it encompasses the entire intersection, as opposed to a speed table or a speed hump, which is only maybe about 12 feet wide. So it's going to have pretty similar effects to kind of maybe a more traditional speed hump or speed table that you might see on a lot of our local and collector roads.
And I would agree with that. And it signals to drivers that they need to slow down. And it also makes the pedestrians a little bit more prominent and visible just by keeping them up above the road just that much higher.
Perfect. And so taking that into consideration, I'm reading through some of the comments, and some refers to the need of more bulb outs throughout the corridor, and especially at those locations, for example, at Care, Shoshone, and Taggart, for example. Can you expand a little bit on those locations, Darren?
Yes. So the difficulty with bulb outs in this sort of configuration is they'll work where we have on-street parking, because you can see there's no conflict here, right? This is the parking lane, and the bike lane adjoins that. However, on the south side of the road, where we have only a bike lane, if we were to have bulb outs at the intersection, they would block the bike lane. And so again, as a compromise solution, we added the bulb outs at locations where we didn't have a raised intersection or a four-way stop, to kind of again get that traffic calming effect of keeping cars or keeping vehicles at about a 650-foot distance before they reach some sort of signal to go slow and watch for bikes and pedestrians.
Great, thank you, Darren. And finally, my last question goes to the last segment 5, Nez Perce from Vista to Columbus Street. So some of the comments we're reading through is regarding the need of some traffic calming along that stretch. Can you talk to us about the challenges on that segment, and why did we went with the current proposal?
Sure. So this stretch of roadway is a fairly short stretch of roadway, about a half a mile or so, I believe. And it is a fairly low volume street, and with fairly low speeds now. The installation of sidewalks where they're missing will have a traffic calming effect its own self, particularly with on-street parking on the street. And so again, in the interest of trying to serve all interests and all users and be cost efficient with the public's dollars, we propose to just fill in the gaps in the sidewalk system and then add sharrows rather than bike lanes on this stretch.
That sounds great, Darren. Thank you for that detailed description. So those are the questions that I have, Darren. Certainly appreciate the work done, and certainly this is the proposed improvements we have. So Darren, I will let you continue towards the next steps and kind of like talking about the schedule and how the public can provide their comments moving forward.
Right. So I will show you a link again where you can go and view the full project online and take the full survey. Having got through our last public information meeting, which we're doing right now, our team will take all of this back, as well as the information that we received from the online survey, and we will refine these drawings into a preferred concept, which will then be packaged into a report that can be taken to the ACHD Commission for consideration and adoption. I'm not sure, Edinson, that we have a firm date yet that you'll have that in front of the commission. Have you scheduled that?
So right now we're looking for a pre-adoption in November, where we're gonna release once again the draft plan, the draft concept for public review. So something to expect as we start refining the concept. The public will have an opportunity once again to look at what that preferred alternative will look like before it goes in front of the commission for adoption consideration. So something to expect as we get closer into the fall, late fall, winter part of the year.
Excellent. Thank you. And then that brings us again to this link to the virtual open house. It's pretty easy to find, and it's on the ACHD website, or it's pretty easy to find just by Googling it, or you can certainly take a screenshot of the link here and paste that into your browser, and it'll take you right there. And with that, Edinson, I think that completes our program.
Perfect.
Any final thoughts for those watching at home?
Well, Darren, if you want to stop sharing very quickly. So certainly, thank you all for watching, for attending the meeting, looking over through the story map, reviewing the material that we prepared for everyone. Certainly, we appreciate your participation, either through this virtual meeting or especially through the story map and surveys that we have prepared. We'll make sure to review all comments and update the exhibits and the concept based on that feedback. Well, I just encourage everyone to participate, and that's my spiel for today. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.